I was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting the neckline of my wedding dress for the 100th time, when I got the message. The timing couldn't have been more cinematic or cruel. A simple text on the screen of my phone, glowing like a curse. I can't do this. I'm sorry. That was it. No explanation. No call. No name. Just those 6 words that crushed my chest like a collapsing roof. At first, I laughed. It had to be a prank. Maybe one of my bridesmaids thought this was funny, some twisted bachelorette joke. But even as I forced out a laugh, something in my stomach dropped. My hands went cold. I tried calling him.
Once. Twice.
For times. Straight to voicemail. I checked my messages, scrolling frantically. No clues. No hint of doubt. Just hours earlier, he'd sent a voice note saying, "I can't wait to call you my wife tomorrow. I love you more than you'll ever know."
So why?
My phone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor. My best friend Tara came rushing in, heels clicking on the tiled floor, her lipstick half done. "Hey, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." I didn't even answer. I just handed her my phone with shaking hands. She read the message and froze. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have anything clever or comforting to say. That's when the silence in the room started to feel unnatural. Like the air had thickened. And I couldn't shake the feeling. He's not just gone. Something's really wrong. You don't just disappear the night before your wedding. Not unless you're running from something. Or someone. I paced the room like a trapped animal, trying to convince myself this was something small. Something fixable. Maybe he'd had a panic attack. Maybe his phone had been stolen. Maybe he was still coming, and this was all some insane mistake. But every explanation I gave myself started to crumble the more I thought about it. We had no fights. No red flags. No secrets, or at least I thought we didn't. We'd planned everything together. Down to the kind of napkins on the reception tables. He was obsessed with the playlist for the first dance. He cried when we found the perfect venue. I remember thinking, this man wants this just as much as I do.
And now? Gone. Ghosted.
Not a trace. I collapsed onto the bed in my dress, trying not to ruin the fabric with my tears. Every passing minute felt like another mile between us. I kept checking my phone like some kind of ritual. Open, refresh, wait. Open, refresh, wait. Nothing. Then I remembered something. A few weeks ago, I'd caught him staring out the window during dinner, silent, like he was somewhere else entirely. When I asked if he was okay, he'd smiled too fast and said, "Yeah, just thinking." Thinking about what? I brushed it off back then. But now, every memory was turning into a question mark. Every moment, a possible warning sign I'd missed. Was he lying all along? Was this whole wedding a performance? I stood up, ripped off the veil, and stared at my reflection again. But this time, I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. She looked like someone who had just been left behind without a map. That's when the second message came. "Please don't call the police. I'll explain everything soon. I promise." I almost dropped the phone again. This wasn't just cold feet. This was fear. This was a warning. And I was no longer asking, why did he leave? I was asking, what the hell is he caught up in? Something told me the answer wouldn't just break my heart. It would shatter everything I thought I knew about him. And maybe, even about myself. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window in my wedding dress, half-zipped, mascara streaked down my cheeks, watching the quiet street outside the hotel suite. The world looked normal, too normal for what was happening inside me, for what was happening to my life. That second message kept replaying in my mind. "Please don't call the police. I'll explain everything soon. I promise." But how could I not? I was supposed to marry him in less than 12 hours. Guests were flying in. The cake was being delivered. My father was practicing his speech. And my fiancé, James, was somewhere out there, possibly in danger, or worse, hiding something. The longer I sat there, the more I realized I didn't know what scared me more, something happening to him, or something happening because of him. At 4:32 a.m., I opened his drawer in our shared apartment. I wasn't even thinking clearly, I just needed answers. Clues. Anything. His closet was still full, his suitcase untouched. The cufflinks he was supposed to wear were still in the box. But in his drawer, under some old receipts and spare change, I found something that made my blood run cold. A phone I had never seen before. It was off, tucked under some socks like he never meant for anyone to find it. I stared at it for a few minutes, debating if I even wanted to turn it on. My fingers were trembling as I pressed the power button. A flicker. Then it lit up. No password. Just 4 recent texts. 3 from someone labeled R. R. We said no more contact after this week. R. You promised, James. You promised me. R. You're not getting out of this clean. And the 4th message was a draft, never sent. From James. I never wanted to lie to her. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I cover my mouth to keep from screaming. This wasn't a case of cold feet. This was blackmail. Or betrayal. Or something far worse. I didn't know who R was, but clearly, they held something over James, and whatever it was strong enough to make him disappear hours before saying, I do. I took screenshots. I needed proof. Evidence. That's when I noticed something else. His computer was gone. He'd taken it. Why take a laptop, but not a suitcase? Not a single pair of clothes? My stomach dropped. He hadn't just left. He'd planned this. He knew he was going to vanish. And he left just enough behind to make it look sudden, but not enough to cover his tracks completely. I sat there trying to piece together what could be going on. Who was R? What could James be involved in? What could be so serious that he would throw away the life we were building? And then I remembered something from 2 months earlier. We were at brunch, laughing over Eggs Benedict, when his phone rang. He looked at the screen, froze for a split second, then sent the call to voicemail. When I asked who it was, he smiled too quickly again and said, Work stuff. Boring. But James didn't have a job that involved secrecy. He was a graphic designer. A freelancer. He worked from home, in sweatpants most days. What kind of work call makes a man go stiff and lie to his fiancé? It wasn't making sense. But I was starting to see a picture, a darker version of him. One I'd never dared imagine. By 6:15 a.m., I made a decision. I texted him, James, I'm not going to the police. But you need to tell me what's going on. I deserve that. I need that. It showed delivered. But not read. I felt helpless. Powerless. Tara walked in, holding a cup of coffee like it was a weapon of war. You look like hell, she said softly, setting it down beside me. I feel worse. She glanced at the wedding dress, still hanging like a ghost in the closet. Want me to cancel everything? I hesitated. I don't know yet, because a part of me was still holding on to hope. That he'd come through that door. That he'd explain. That there was some messed up reason, but a reason nonetheless. But with each passing minute, I knew. Hope was bleeding out fast. Tara sat beside me and asked the one thing I was too afraid to answer. What if he's not the man you thought he was? I didn't respond. Because I already knew. At 7:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. I grabbed it like a lifeline, praying it was James. But it wasn't a call. It was an email. Subject line. Urgent. If you love him, read this. No sender name. Just a random series of letters and numbers. My hands shook as I clicked it open. The message was short. Brutally short. You don't know who he really is. Ask him about Miami, 2019. If you want proof, meet me at the diner on 8th and Main at 8 a.m.
Come alone.
I stared at the screen, blinking. Miami, 2019? We met in 2020. He told me he lived in New York before moving here. Why would someone want me to ask about Miami? Tara leaned over, reading the message silently with me. She didn't say anything at first. Then she whispered, This is starting to sound dangerous. I knew she was right. Every instinct in me screamed to run. To forget James. To call the police. To let them handle it. But love makes you reckless. Love makes you stupid. Love made me grab my jacket and keys without thinking twice.
Tara tried to stop me.
At least let me come with you.
No, I said.
They said alone. I have to know. For myself. The city streets were strangely calm for a Saturday morning. Gray clouds hovered low like a warning from the heavens. I pulled into the diner parking lot at 7:58 a.m., heart hammering against my ribs. Inside, the place was nearly empty. A waitress wiping down a counter. A man reading a newspaper. A woman in a green jacket sitting in a booth near the back, staring at the door like she was waiting for someone. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know if I could trust anyone. Then she waved at me. Tentatively. Nervously. The woman in the green jacket. I walked toward her slowly, every cell in my body on high alert. She looked about my age, maybe a few years older. Tired eyes. Fidgety hands. When I sat down across from her, she spoke first. You must be her. Her who? His fiancé. I didn't answer. She pulled something out of her bag, an envelope, and slid it across the table. Inside were photos.
Dozens of them. James.
With another woman. Another wife. Wedding photos. Smiling.
Kissing.
Signing papers. Date stamped. June 2019. Location. Miami, Florida. My head spun. You're lying, I said, voice barely a whisper. I wish I were. I flipped through the photos, heart in my throat. There was James, my James, wearing a tuxedo, standing beside a woman with blonde hair, holding her hand, sliding a ring onto her finger. I felt sick. I felt betrayed. But I needed answers. Who are you? I demanded. She hesitated, looked around the diner like she was scared someone would hear. My name is Rachel, she said finally. I was married to his brother. His brother?
Yes. Mark.
James's younger brother.
He's dead now.
Car accident. 2 years ago. My mind reeled. What does this have to do with James? She leaned in closer, voice dropping to a whisper. After Mark died, James started changing. He got into some bad stuff. Owed a lot of people a lot of money. The only way out was insurance fraud. Fake marriages. Identity swaps. Disappearances. Start over somewhere else. My mouth went dry. You're saying James married someone for money? Rachel nodded grimly. Miami was just one of many. He's done it before. He'll do it again. You're just the next chapter. I felt the ground shifting under me, like my entire life was built on sand. But why now? Why run now? I whispered. Rachel's face darkened. Because this time, someone found him. Someone from his past. Someone who didn't forget. And they're here. In this city. Right now. I clutched the photos in my lap, pulse roaring in my ears. He's running for his life, Rachel said. Not from you. Not from love. From the people he screwed over. I thought about the text from R. The fear in James's message. The missing laptop.
He wasn't afraid of me.
He was afraid of the past catching up. And it finally had. Rachel reached out and touched my hand gently. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. I really am. But you needed to know. I pulled my hand away, numb. What was I supposed to do now? Call off the wedding? Call the police? Call James? I sat there, staring at the photos, feeling 100 emotions all at once. Betrayal. Anger.
Fear.
But underneath all of it, heartbreak. The man I thought I knew, the man I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with, was a stranger. A con artist. A liar. And maybe worse. I left the diner with my heart broken in two and my head spinning in 100 directions. The sky outside had turned from gray to a stormy shade of charcoal. Rain threatened to fall at any second. It felt fitting, like the universe was preparing to weep for me. I sat in my car gripping the steering wheel, staring out the windshield, unable to move. What do you do when the man you were about to marry is hiding a past like that? What do you do when love and deception intertwine so tightly that you can't tell one from the other? The envelope of photos sat on the passenger seat beside me, like a cruel ghost. I didn't know where to go.
Or what to feel.
But something inside me whispered, you need to face him. So I drove. Not to the police. Not to my parents. To his apartment. The place he swore he hadn't been to in weeks. It was a 15-minute drive. The longest 15 minutes of my life. When I pulled up, his car was there. So he had lied. Again. I didn't knock. I walked in using the spare key he once said, only you should ever have. The lights were off. Silence. I called out, James? Nothing. I walked through the living room slowly. It looked the same, except the coffee table was cleared off. The books and magazines usually stacked in neat rows were gone. His laptop bag was open but empty. Then I saw the note. Folded in half. My name on the front. Ava. I opened it with shaking hands. I wanted to tell you everything. I tried. But the moment never came. Maybe I was scared you'd leave. Maybe I was scared I'd lose the first real thing in my life that actually felt true. Miami, it's not what you think. Yes, I was married. But not for love. Not for family. It was business. A favor.
A debt.
Something I couldn't escape. But you were never part of the plan. You were the curveball I didn't see coming. And for that, I'm sorry. I'm not running from you, Ava. I'm running to something. To end this. To fix it before it takes both of us down. I love you. That part, at least, was always real. I sat on the couch and cried. I didn't know whether to hate him or hold on to that final sentence like a lifeline. I love you, that part was real. But how can you trust love when everything else was a lie? And yet, a strange calm came over me. Because now I had a choice. I wasn't being kept in the dark anymore. I knew the truth, or at least enough of it. And I could either walk away or confront him. I chose the second. The only place he could have gone was back to the one location he always said he'd never return to, Miami. So I did something crazy. I booked a flight, packed a bag, and flew to a city full of answers. I didn't have a plan, only a heart full of questions and a gut feeling he would be there. I found him 2 days later, not in some back alley or shady building. In a hospital, room 412. He'd been beaten.
Badly.
Broken ribs. Swollen eye. Dislocated shoulder. But alive. When he saw me standing at the door, his eyes filled with tears. Not from pain. From something deeper.
Shame.
Maybe relief. You came, he whispered. I nodded slowly. I had to know. He tried to sit up, but winced. I walked in and stood beside the bed, silent. Finally, I asked, why didn't you just tell me?
His voice was raw.
Because you were the only part of my life that felt pure. I didn't want to stain you with the rest. I looked away, swallowing the lump in my throat. Rachel told me everything. He winced again. Of course she did. She said you were a con man. A fraud. He didn't respond. Just stared at the ceiling like it held all the truths he didn't want to speak. I don't even know who you are, I whispered. He turned his head slowly and locked eyes with me. You do. You know the version of me that came alive because of you. A tear slipped down my cheek. I believed in you, James. I loved you. And I still love you, he said softly. That's the only truth I've ever known. There was silence between us.
Thick. Heavy.
Full of the things we couldn't take back. I'm tired of running, he whispered. I nodded. So am I. Weeks passed. James remained in the hospital for almost a month. His body slowly healed, but his soul, well, that was a different kind of wound. We didn't speak every day. In fact, some days passed in complete silence. But I visited. I sat by his bed. I brought books. Sometimes we just stared at the same window and said nothing. Healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, awkward, and full of hesitation. I didn't know what we were anymore. Not lovers. Not strangers. Somewhere in between hope and heartbreak. One day, as I walked into the hospital, I noticed a nurse placing a brown envelope at the nurse's station with my name on it. Another envelope. I almost didn't open it, but something told me this wasn't like the last. Inside was a letter.
Ava.
This might be the last time I write to you. I know I've said things like that before, but this time I mean it differently. I'm walking away. Not from you, but from the life that brought you pain. I've turned over the names, the accounts, the files, Everything that could hurt me or worse us. I'm handing it all over. I'll probably be under investigation. Maybe worse. But this time, it's not about survival. It's about redemption. You once asked me who I really am. I think I'm still finding out. But if there's any chance that one day you could believe in me again, I want to be the kind of man who deserves that belief. I love you. Always. James. I stood there, in the hallway of that sterile building, tears running down my face again. But this time, they were different. Not just sadness, but clarity. He wasn't perfect. Far from it. But he was trying. And maybe that mattered more than the past ever could. Fast forward 2 months. James was released from the hospital. He went into a protective program cooperating with authorities. His past, it was messy, tied to things I never could have imagined. International accounts, syndicates, hidden marriages for business deals, a web of lies spun out of desperation. But through all of it, he kept one thread clean.
Me.
And that was why I stayed in touch. Letters.
Calls.
The occasional guarded meeting. Until one day he sent me a box. Inside was the ring. The same one he'd planned to give me before the truth crashed down. But it wasn't an engagement ring anymore. It was strung on a chain. With a note. This isn't a proposal. This is a promise. That I will never lie to you again. That I will earn your trust. Every day, even if it takes the rest of my life. I wore it. Not as a commitment to a relationship, but to a decision. To see people for who they are becoming, not just who they once were. Now, as I write this, I'm sitting in a quiet apartment. My apartment. A new one. Different city. Different chapter. James is still rebuilding his life.
So am I.
We're not back together. Not officially. But we're connected in a way most people wouldn't understand. Because once you've seen the darkest parts of someone and still choose to stay in their light, even from a distance, that's something unshakable. Something real. People ask me all the time if I regret it. If I wish I had never walked into that diner. Never met him. Never opened that envelope of truths. But I don't. Because that heartbreak? It cracked me open. And through those cracks, I let in a kind of strength I never knew I had. This story isn't a fairy tale. There's no wedding in the final scene. No sweeping music as we dance into the sunset. But there is something better. There's truth.
Growth.
Redemption. And the quiet courage to face what we fear and still choose love. Not blindly, not foolishly, but honestly. So no, I don't regret the heartbreak. Because it showed me who I am. And who I'm still becoming.